air here holds a weight that is entirely its own. A heavy, saline embrace that meets you the moment the cabin pressure releases. It is not merely humidity, but a texture, a suspended mixture of ancient stone, deep water, and the faint, sweet decay of history dissolving into the lagoon. This atmosphere does not rush to greet you. Instead, it settles against the skin like a damp linen cloth, cool and persistent, instantly slowing the pulse. The light outside, the small oval window, has changed from the harsh clarity of the upper atmosphere to a diffuse, milky gold, scattered by the moisture rising from the water below. Movement begins not with a rush, but with a collective exhale. The cabin aisle clears, and the slow shuffle forward commences. My hand finds the leather handle of my bag, the grip warm and familiar. It is the only anchor in this transitional space. We move through the narrow corridor of the jet bridge, where the floor feels hollow and bounces slightly under the collective weight of tired travelers. The sound of footsteps is muffled here, absorbed by the thin industrial carpet, a quiet prelude to the stone city that awaits. Emerging into the terminal, the acoustics shift instantly. The ceiling lifts high above, a vast expanse of steel and glass that captures the echoes of rolling luggage and distant announcements. The floor here is polished terrazzo, a composite of marble chips set in concrete, smooth as glass. My shoes make a crisp, deliberate sound against it. Click echo, click echo. The rhythm is steady, a metronome counting down the distance between the sky and the sea. I do not hurry. There is no reason to run. The suitcase glides beside me, its wheels humming a low, constant note against the hard surface. Through the towering glass walls, the sky is a pale, washed-out blue, devoid of clouds, but thick with that characteristic Venetian haze. The light falls in long, slanting beams across the floor, illuminating motes of dust that dance in the stillness of the air-conditioned hall. The walk through the arrival concourse is a study in repetition. One foot places itself before the other. The weight of the bag in my hand is a grounding force, a reminder of gravity returning after hours of flight. I pass rows of empty seats, their black vinyl gleaming under the artificial lights. A cleaner moves a wide mop across the floor in slow, hypnotic arcs, back and forth, back and forth. The faint scent of lemon polish rises, mixing with the underlying salt air that manages to seep through even these sealed doors. The corridor stretches on, a long, straight line of perspective. Other travelers are merely shapes in the periphery, their voices reduced to a low murmur that blends with the hum of the ventilation system. I focus on the sensation of walking, the slight flex of the sole, the roll of the heel, the push of the toe. The floor changes texture occasionally, shifting from smooth terrazzo to a textured rubber matting near a set of automatic doors, then back to stone. Each transition sends a different vibration up the handle of the suitcase, a tactile map of the journey. Navigating the customs area, the pace slows to a shuffle. The queue is a river of stillness. Shoulders drop, necks roll to release tension. The stamp of a passport is a dull, heavy thud, a punctuation mark ending the chapter of the flight. Then the forward motion resumes. The sliding glass doors part with a pneumatic sigh, releasing me into the arrival's hall proper. Here, the path to the water is a long, dedicated journey. I follow the blue signs pointing toward the Darsina, the dock. This is a long walk, a transition zone that feels separated from the rest of the world. I step onto a moving walkway. The rubber handrail moves at the exact speed of the floor beneath my feet. I stand still, letting the machinery carry me. The suitcase rests by my side. The walls of this long tunnel are lined with advertisements for watches and perfumes, but they blur into a stream of color. The only sound is the rhythmic thump-thump of the belt rolling over its rollers, a steady heartbeat that encourages the eyes to lose focus. The walkway ends, and I step onto solid ground, only to walk 10 paces and step onto the next one. This repetition creates a trance-like state. Thump thump, thump thump. The air grows cooler the further I travel from the main terminal. The smell of the lagoon becomes stronger, less filtered. It is the scent of wet wood and algae, distinct and organic. At the end of the long corridor, the path descends. An escalator carries me down. The metal steps grooved and silver, moving with a mechanical purr. As I descend, the view opens up. The glass walls disappear, replaced by open air. The temperature shifts again, the humidity wrapping around me completely now. I step off the escalator and onto the pavement. The ground here is different. It is brick and concrete, rougher, realer. The sound of the luggage wheels changes from a smooth hum to a textured rumble. I walk toward the water's edge. The docks are busy, but organized. A series of floating platforms rising and falling gently with the tide. I locate the ticket window, a small booth with a glass front. The transaction is quiet. A few words exchanged. A paper ticket slid across the counter. I take it and turn toward the water. The Alla Laguna boat awaits. It is a sleek, low vessel, painted white with a yellow stripe. It sits low in the water, bobbing rhythmically. I step from the concrete quay onto the metal gangway, then onto the boat itself. The vessel shifts under my weight, a fluid, welcoming motion. The crewman takes my bag, placing it in a pile of others with a practiced, efficient motion. I step down into the cabin. It is cool inside, sheltered from the sun. The windows are long and rectangular, framed in black rubber. splashed with dried salt spray that obscures the view slightly, turning the world outside into an impressionist painting. The seats are upholstered in worn blue vinyl. I choose one near the back, away from the door. The engine is idling, a deep, resonant vibration that I feel in the soles of my shoes and the base of my spine. It is a powerful, dormant beast waiting to wake. Other passengers settle in. There is the rustle of nylon jackets, the soft thud of bags being stowed, the murmur of hushed conversations in 3 or 4 different languages. But soon, a quiet falls over the cabin. We are all waiting. We are all in between. The engine pitch changes, deepening to a growl. The boat reverses slowly, churning the green water into a white froth. The vibration increases, becoming a steady shudder that loosens the last of the travel tension from my muscles. We turn, the hull swinging around in a wide arc, and then the nose lifts slightly as we pick up speed. We are not moving fast. In the lagoon, speed is regulated, measured. We move at a steady, chugging pace. I look out the window. The airport falls away, a low gray structure dissolving into the mist. We are in the open lagoon now. The water is a flat, opaque teal, like liquid jade. It stretches out in every direction, calm and vast. The journey is marked by the brickle, the clusters of wooden pilings that mark the navigable channels. They stand like sentinels in the water, groups of 3 thick logs bound together by iron bands. Some are weathered and gray, bleached by the sun. Others are dark with rot and moss near the waterline. On top of some, a seagull rests, motionless as a statue. We pass them one by one. They are the mile markers of this liquid road. The rhythm of the boat is hypnotic. It does not jar or bump its sways. It is a long, rolling motion that syncs with the breath. The engine drones on, a white noise that drowns out all thought. I watch the wake of the boat spreading out behind us, a V-shape of white foam that slowly fades back into the green stillness. In the distance, the skyline of Venice begins to emerge from the haze. It does not look like a modern city. It looks like a mirage. The campaniles, the bell towers, rise first, thin fingers pointing at the pale sky. Then the domes of the churches, round and lead gray. Then the terracotta roofs, a smudge of burnt orange against the horizon. It approaches slowly, layer by layer, detail by detail. The boat slows as we enter the channel near Murano. The engine drops to a low idle again. We drift past walls of red brick, past warehouses with open doors revealing the glow of glass furnaces. The water here is darker, reflecting the buildings. The sound of the wash against the canal walls echoes back to us. Slap, splash, slap. We continue. The main island draws closer. The vastness of the lagoon gives way to the intimacy of the city. we pass the cemetery island of San Michel, enclosed by high terracotta walls and tall, dark cypress trees that stand like ink strokes against the sky. It is a place of profound silence, and we pass it with respect, the wake of our boat gently washing against its foundations. The boat angles toward the fondament Nove. The engine reverses thrust, the water churning violently for a moment to slow our momentum. The crewman throws a thick rope around a bollard. The boat bumps gently against the rubber bumpers of the floating dock. The sensation is soft, a cushioned impact. I stand up. My legs feel heavy, but steady. I step up from the cabin into the air. It is different here than at the airport. It smells of roasting coffee, old stone, and the sea. I step off the boat, onto the dock, and then onto the pavement of Venice. There are no cars. The silence of the absence of engines is the first thing that strikes the senses. There is no tire noise, no horns, no mechanical hum of traffic. Instead, the soundscape is composed of human-scale noises. The scuff of shoes on stone, the distant peal of a church bell, the lapping of water against the steps. I take the handle of my suitcase. The wheels rattle over the masonry, the great paving stones of volcanic trachyte that pave the city. It is a distinct, textured sound. Rattle-clack, rattle-clack. It echoes off the walls of the narrow alleyway, the Cal. I turn away from the open water of the lagoon and enter the maze. The light changes instantly. The buildings are tall and close together, casting deep, cool shadows. The sun touches only the upper stories, painting the peeling plaster in shades of ochre and pink. Down here in the street, the air is cool and still. I walk slowly. There is no straight line to anywhere in this city. The street winds, curves, and opens unexpectedly into a small square, a campo with a stone wellhead in the center. I pause here. A few pigeons peck at the ground. A cat sleeps on a windowsill. An orange ball of fur undisturbed by my passing. I listen to the quiet. It is a heavy, centuries-old silence that absorbs sound. I cross a small bridge. It is made of white stone, arching steeply over a narrow canal. I have to lift the suitcase, carrying it by the handle. The weight pulls at my shoulder, a good, solid ache. I pause at the top of the bridge. Below, the water in the canal is dark green, almost black. A gondola is moored there, covered in a blue tarp, bobbing ever so slightly. The water is so still, it looks like glass, reflecting the flower boxes hanging from the windows above. Down the other side of the bridge, the wheels resume their rattle on the stones. I turn left, then right. The map in my mind is vague, but the destination is close. I pass a bakery, the scent of yeast and sugar wafting out a warm, open door. I pass a workshop where the smell of varnish and wood dust hangs in the air. Finally, I reach the heavy wooden door. It is dark green, studded with iron nails, set into a stone archway that has settled and shifted over 500 years. There is a small brass buzzer. I press it. A moment later, a buzz, and the lock clicks open. I push the door. It is heavy, requiring a lean of the shoulder. I step inside. The transition is immediate. The noise of the street, faint as it was, vanishes completely. The air inside is cool, smelling of beeswax and marble. The floor is a checkerboard of red and white stone, worn smooth in the center by generations of feet. I lift the suitcase so the wheels do not mark the silence. The lobby is small and dim, lit by a Murano glass chandelier that casts soft, colored petals of light onto the walls. A receptionist nods, a silent greeting, and hands me a heavy metal key with a brass tassel. No electronic cards here, just the weight of brass. I take the stairs. They are wide and shallow, easier to climb than modern stairs. My hand glides up the polished wooden banister. 1 flight, 2. The building is old, and the stairs creak softly, a welcoming, house-settling sound. I find my room at the end of a short corridor. The key turns in the lock with a satisfying mechanical clunk. The door swings open. The room is filled with a soft, diffused light filtering through heavy curtains. I step in and close the door behind me, engaging the lock. The world is now shut out completely. I place the suitcase on a wooden rack. I do not open it yet. That is for later. For now, I only need to stop. I walk to the window and draw back the heavy fabric. The view is of a small side canal. Across the way, a window box spills red geraniums against a peeling yellow wall. Below, a boat passes silently, its oarsmen rowing with a slow, rhythmic stroke. The water makes a gentle swirling sound as the oar dips and pulls. I turn back to the room. The bed is large, dominated by a tall wooden headboard. The sheets are white, crisp, and pulled tight. I sit on the edge of the mattress. It is firm, yielding just enough. I unlace my shoes. The simple act of removing them feels like shedding a layer of armor. I place them side by side on the floor. I wiggle my toes, feeling the coolness of the air. I lie back. The duvet is heavy, a comforting weight that settles over the legs. The pillow is cool against my cheek. I stare up at the ceiling, where exposed wooden beams run across the plaster. My body still feels the phantom motion of the boat, a gentle swaying sensation, rocking back and forth, back and forth. It is not dizzying. It is soothing like a cradle. The hum of the airplane is gone. The rattle of the suitcase wheels is gone. There is only the silence of the room and the faint, rhythmic lap of water against the stone foundations 3 stories below. I close my eyes, and the city holds me in its drifting, watery embrace. The gray stone of Piazzale Roma is cool and damp beneath the soles of my shoes. It is the hour before the city truly wakes, a suspended moment where the night has retreated, but the day has not yet fully claimed the sky. The air here holds a specific weight. It is heavy with the scent of salt and ancient limestone, mixed with the faint, oily sweetness of diesel fuel. I move toward the water. The solid pavement, which connects this island to the mainland, ends abruptly at the canal edge. Ahead lies the floating station, the metal pontoon rising and falling with a gentle, almost imperceptible rhythm. A yellow sign glows with a soft, electric hum, displaying the number 1. Line 1, the slow boat, the vessel that touches every stop along the inverted S shape of the Grand Canal. There is no crowd. The metal gate separating the dock from the water is closed, a barrier of white painted iron. I lean against the railing of the station, the metal cold against my jacket. Below, through the gaps in the floorboards, the water is dark and opaque. It slaps against the hollow underside of the pontoon. A dull, rhythmic thudding. It sounds like a heartbeat slowed down to match the pace of the tide. A low rumble approaches from the left. The water begins to churn, shifting from a flat, glassy surface to a turbulent mixture of white foam and deep green currents. The vaporetto arrives. It is a wide, sturdy creature of white paint and varnished wood, drifting in sideways with practiced ease. The engine reverses, a deep, vibrating growl that I feel in my chest more than I hear with my ears. The boat slows. It hovers. The sailor on deck throws a thick rope around the bollard, the hemp tightening with a wet creak. With a mechanical clatter, the gate slides open. I step across the gap. The transition is subtle, a shift from the stable earth to a surface that is alive. The deck vibrates. It is a constant, low-frequency hum that travels up through my boots, grounding me in the motion of the vessel. I do not go inside the glass-enclosed cabin, where the few early commuters sit with their heads bowed over newspapers. Instead, I move to the stern. This is the open-air section at the very back of the boat. A curved wooden bench runs along the semicircle of the railing, but I choose to stand. I position myself right at the center, looking back at the wake, gripping the cold, damp rail. The sailor unloops the rope. The gate clatters shut. The engine deepens its tone, shifting from a wait to a push. We begin to move. Piazzale Roma recedes. The modern world falls away, layer by layer. The concrete bus terminal, the car park, the hints of the mainland, they all dissolve into the gray mist. We are entering the canal proper. The boat picks up speed, not fast, but steady. The nose of the vessel cuts the water, but here at the stern, I only see the aftermath. The wake is a mesmerizing, chaotic sculpture. Two thick rolls of white water unfurl from beneath the hull, twisting and boiling before flattening out into wide, expanding ripples that race toward the canal walls. I watch the water change color. Immediately behind the propeller, it is a churned, milky white. A few feet back, it deepens to a pale turquoise, aerated and light. Further back still, it returns to the dark, mossy green of the lagoon, blending into the shadows of the sleeping buildings. We glide under the Scoutsea Bridge. The stone arch is high and graceful, a pale silhouette against the brightening sky. There are no people on it yet, just the quiet stones. The sound of our passage echoes briefly as we pass underneath, a hollow, rushing sound, and then dissipates into the open air. The palaces begin to rise on either side. They are silent giants, their facades washed in the blue hour of dawn. Shutters are closed tight against the morning dampness. There is no movement in the windows, no electric light spilling out. They are sleeping structures, dreaming of the centuries that have passed them by. I watch the waterline of these buildings. The canal laps against their foundations, turning the bottom stones dark and slick. Green moss clings to the waterline, a velvet band that marks the tide. The boat slows as we approach the first stop, the engine dropping to a murmur, the wake settling into a gentle froth. We drift in. The rope flies. The gate opens. No one gets on. The gate closes. The rope returns. We drift out. The rhythm establishes itself. It is a slow, hypnotic loop of motion and pause, motion and pause. As we curve further into the heart of the city, the light begins to change. The gray lifts, replaced by a soft, diffused pearl tone. It catches on the water, turning the canal into a sheet of hammered metal. To my right, the Ca d'Oro appears. The house of gold, even without the gilding that once covered its facade, it glows. The intricate stone tracery of the loggias looks like lace stiffened by the salt air. But it is not the building itself that holds my gaze. It is the reflection. The water here is calm, sheltered by the curve of the canal. The reflection of the Ca d'Oro plunges deep into the green depths. The pointed arches of the ground floor are mirrored perfectly, creating the illusion of a water cave. It looks like a sunken entrance, a portal leading down into a submerged world identical to the one above, but silent and wavering. The boat disturbs the image. Our wake rolls toward the palace, and the reflection shatters. The stone arches in the water wiggle, break apart into horizontal slices of light and shadow, and then slowly, painstakingly, try to reassemble themselves as the ripples fade. I remain at the stern. The vibration of the deck has become part of my own physiology. My breathing has slowed to match the surge of the engine. The boat continues its steady progress. We are moving through a corridor of history, but the names of the families who built these palaces do not matter now. The dates of their construction are irrelevant. There is only the texture of the stone, the color of the peeling plaster ochre, burnt sienna, faded rose, and the way the damp air clings to everything. We enter a long stretch of water, a straight line where the canal widens. I rest my hands on the railing. The varnish is smooth, worn down by thousands of hands before mine. I look down at the water directly beneath the stern. It is rushing away from me, a constant exodus of fluid. The sensation is singular, standing still while the world pulls away. The air is cold on my cheeks. It is not a biting cold, but a fresh, awakening chill that smells of open water. I close my eyes for a moment, letting the other senses take over. The sound of the water is complex. There is the deep bass of the engine, a constant thrum. Layered over that is the hiss of the spray, a sound like heavy rain on pavement. And beneath it all, the slap of the waves against the canal walls, a rhythmic applause that follows us as we move. I open my eyes. The sky is lighter now, a pale, washed-out blue. The tops of the buildings are catching the first true light of the day, glowing with a warmth that has not yet reached the water level. We drift past a row of mooring poles. They are thick wooden trunks driven into the mud, painted in spirals of blue and white, or red and gold. They stand like sentinels, crooked and leaning, worn by the tides. Some are covered in barnacles near the waterline. Others are capped with metal to prevent rot. I count them as they pass. 1, 2, 3, a cluster of 5. They slide by in the peripheral vision, markers of distance in a fluid landscape. The engine note changes again, dropping in pitch. We are slowing for another stop. The boat angles toward a wooden dock. I watch the gap between the hull and the station close. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1. The water between the two surfaces boils and protests, trapped and compressed, before we make contact with a dull, heavy bump. The boat settles. I do not move. I do not check the name of the stop. I am content to be a passenger, a witness to the morning. We push off again. The cycle repeats. The following passage is a valley of pure sensation, a time where the mind stops categorizing and simply records. The vibration under my feet is constant. It is a tingling sensation that starts in the soles of my shoes and travels up to my knees, a reminder of the mechanical heart beating beneath the floorboards. The railing vibrates in sympathy, a subtle trembling against my palms. I watch the wake. It is endlessly repetitive and endlessly varied. The white foam bubbles up, thousands of tiny pockets of air trapped for a second before bursting. The patterns shift. Sometimes the wake is symmetrical, a perfect V shape trailing behind us. Sometimes, when the boat turns, one side flares out, a wide fan of turbulence that crashes against the nearest wall. The sound is a white noise blanket. It drowns out the distant sounds of the city waking up. I cannot hear footsteps on the pavement. I cannot hear voices. I can only hear the water. Rush, hiss, thrum. The buildings pass in a blur of texture. Brickwork rough and red. Plaster smooth and flaking. Stone white and gray. Iron grills over windows, painted black, rusting at the joints. Balconies filled with empty flower pots. A seagull follows the boat. It hovers at eye level, suspended on the air current we create. Its wings are motionless, white arcs against the gray buildings. It turns its head, a bead of black eye watching the water, watching me. Then, with a single flap, it peels away and vanishes over a terracotta roof. The rhythmic motion induces a trance. My body sways slightly, compensating for the roll of the boat without conscious thought. It is a dance with the water. Lean left, lean right, absorb the bump, correct the balance. The water in the canal is not just one color. As I stare at it, I see streaks of oil creating rainbows on the surface, magenta, and cyan swirling in the green. I see driftweed, long ribbons of vegetation floating just below the surface, reaching up like fingers. I see the reflection of the sky, a pale ribbon running down the center of the canal, broken only by our passage. Time feels elastic here. I do not know if we have been moving for 10 minutes or an hour. The landmarks are familiar but vague, shapes that I recognize but do not need to name. A bridge, a church dome, a wide piazza opening up to the water. They slide by, silent and detached. The air is getting slightly warmer. I can feel the change on my skin. The dampness is receding, replaced by a crisper, drier quality. The smell of coffee begins to drift from the shore, faint and fleeting, mixing with the salt. I shift my weight from one foot to the other. The wooden deck creaks. The sound is lost instantly in the engine's roar. I look at the water churned up by the propeller again. It is mesmerizing how the chaos organizes itself. Chaos, then pattern, then stillness. The water remembers the boat for a minute, holding the shape of the wake, and then it forgets, returning to its smooth, glassy state. We pass a small delivery, boat moored to a pole. It bobs violently in our wake, dancing up and down, straining against its rope. Crates of vegetables are stacked on its deck. The color of red tomatoes and green leaves is startlingly bright against the gray stone backdrop. Then it is gone, left behind in the distance. The rhythm continues. The hum, the vibration, the rush of air. Gradually, the valley begins to shallow. The intensity of the sensory input softens as my mind starts to drift back to the surface. We are approaching a wider bend in the canal. The water here feels more expansive, less contained by the canyon of buildings. The light has fully claimed the upper halves of the palazzos now. The sun has cleared the horizon line of the distant islands and is striking the chimney pots and the altanas, the wooden roof terraces where residents dry their laundry. I look up. The sky is a gradient of color. Directly above, it is a deep, clear blue. Toward the east, where the sun is rising, it softens to a pale lavender, then a warm, buttery gold. The clouds are few, high wisps that catch the light and hold it, glowing pink against the blue. The boat begins its deceleration sequence again. The pitch of the engine slides down the scale. The vibration in the deck slows, becoming more distinct, individual pulses, rather than a continuous hum. We are drifting toward a station on the right bank. The wooden pilings of the dock loom large. I watch the sailor step up to the gap in the railing, the rope coiled in his hand like a resting snake. He waits. He does not rush. He knows the speed of the boat better than he knows the time of day. The boat kisses the rubber bumpers of the station. A soft rebound. The rope flies through the air, a perfect arc, and loops around the cleat. The tension takes the boat, holding it fast against the current. I decide to remain on board. The journey is not finished, but the chapter of the dawn is closing. The magic hour is transitioning into the morning. I turn away from the wake for the first time. I look toward the bow through the glass of the passenger cabin. The city ahead is bright, illuminated, ready to be walked. But for now, I am content to stay suspended between the stations, carried by the water, listening to the idle thrum of the engine as it waits for the signal to move again. The gate slides open with its familiar clatter, inviting the day to enter. The morning arrives not with the sun, but with a sound. It is the domestic trumpet of the opening shutter. In other cities, the day begins with the hum of traffic or the chirping of birds. Here, in the labyrinth of stone and water, it begins with the interaction of wood against stone and metal against rust. I lie in the gray light of the bedroom, listening to the city wake up one window at a time. Across the narrow canal, a neighbor releases the latch. There is a metallic click, followed by the heavy wooden groan of the frame swinging outward. It hits the exterior wall with a dull thud. Then the metal catch is engaged to hold it open against the breeze. Click, swing, thud, clack. It happens again 3 floors down. Then to the left. It is a staggered percussion, a slow applause rippling through the sestiere, the air drifting through my own open window carries the specific weight of Venice, in the early hours. It is cool, smelling of wet limestone, and the deep, saline scent of the lagoon, tempered by the faint aroma of brewing coffee from a kitchen somewhere below. I rise and move to the window. The canal below is a ribbon of obsidian, motionless and opaque. The water has not yet woken up. It holds the reflection of the iron balcony opposite mine, with perfect clarity, doubling the world. Preparing for the day is a slow ritual. I dress in layers, anticipating the chill of the shade and the warmth of the mid-morning sun. My boots are sturdy, ready for the uneven paving stones. I verify the contents of my pockets. The iron key to the apartment is heavy and cold. It has a simple, ancient shape, a skeleton key that feels substantial in the palm. Leaving the apartment, the stairwell is dim. The stone steps are worn into shallow bowls in the center, eroded by centuries of feet ascending and descending. I let my hand trail along the cool plaster of the wall as I go down, grounding myself in the texture of the building. The door to the street is heavy timber, reinforced with iron studs. It requires a firm pull to open, creating a suction of air that seals the house behind me as I step out. The canal is empty. The mist has not quite lifted, clinging to the tops of the bridges and softening the edges of the buildings. I make my way toward the Vaporetto stop, the sound of my boots on the flagstones echoing softly, a solitary rhythm in the quiet. At the landing, the floating platform heaves gently with the current. The yellow stripe on the dock moves up and down against the stationary wooden piles. I wait. The approach of the boat is felt before it is seen. A low vibration travels through the water, vibrating the deck beneath my feet. Then the nose of the vessel cuts through the gray mist, the water churning white at the stern. Boarding is a practice dance. The rope is thrown, the gate slides open, and I step across the gap between the stationary world and the floating one. I find a spot near the stern, in the open air. The engine thrums, a deep heartbeat that resonates through the metal bench. We pull away, and the city begins to slide past. The Grand Canal is wide here, a boulevard of water. But today, my destination is the quiet interior of San Polo. I disembark at the San Silvestro stop. The boat pulls away, leaving a wake that laps against the stone steps, washing over the green algae line before receding. I turn my back on the wide water and enter the network of narrow streets. The transition is instant. The expansive light of the Grand Canal is replaced by the intimate shadows of the tall buildings. I am heading toward the Rio de San Paulo, a wide, curving canal that cuts through the heart of the district. The pavement here is laid in a herringbone pattern, the bricks pale red and bordered by gray trachyte. I follow the curve of the street. To my right, A small bridge arches over a side canal. I do not cross it. I stay on the fundamental, finding the rhythm of the walk. This is the Rio di San Polo. It is wider than the minor canals, allowing for a strip of pavement, a fondamenta, to run alongside it. I settle into a pace that matches the flow of the water. This is the beginning of the long walk, the valley of movement where the mind clears. 1 step, 2 steps. The stone is uneven, requiring a low-level, constant attention that pushes away other thoughts. The buildings lining the canal are a patchwork of centuries. Some are grand palazzos with Gothic windows, their pointed arches delicate and lacy. Others are simpler structures, their plaster peeling to reveal the red brick beneath. I watch the waterline on the opposite bank. This is the history of the tide. The bottom layer of the buildings is clad in Istrian stone, a dense, white limestone that resists the salt. But above that, the brick begins. There is a dark, damp band where the water rises during the high tides, the Aqua Alta. It is a moss line, a permanent bruise on the architecture. Green algae clings to the stone in thick, velvet patches. Above that, the white crust of dried salt. And above that, the damp plaster. It creates a gradient of color: emerald green, dark gray, chalky white, and then the faded ochre or pink of the wall. I continue walking. The fondamenta narrows. I have to step closer to the edge, looking down into the water. It is green and murky, opaque with the silt of the lagoon. Small crabs scuttle sideways on the submerged steps of a water door, vanishing into the cracks as my shadow passes over them. The rhythm of the walk becomes hypnotic. The sound of my boots is a steady metronome. Click step, click step. A boat passes, a small delivery barge filled with crates of vegetables. The engine puts softly, a slow heartbeat. The wake travels outward, hitting the wall below my feet with a wet slap, then rebounding to hit the other side. The water churns, lifting the floating debris, a seagull feather, a fallen leaf, before settling back into glass. I pass a small shrine set into the wall, a faded painting of a saint behind wire mesh, a plastic flower gathering dust in a small vase. I do not stop, but I acknowledge it with a glance. The air here is still. The tall buildings block the wind. It feels protected, a secret corridor of stone and water. I can smell the damp earth of a hidden garden behind a high brick wall. A vine spills over the top, its leaves turning yellow and brown, dropping quietly into the canal below. I focus on the sensation of movement, the transfer of weight from heel to toe, the slight engagement of the calf muscles as I navigate a small rise in the pavement caused by a tree root pushing up the stones. The tree itself is an anomaly, growing out of a square of dirt no larger than a table. its trunk twisted and leaning toward the light. There are no shops here, only the shuttered windows of ground floor storage rooms and the heavy doors of private homes. The silence is thick, textured only by the sound of water and my own breathing. I inhale for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts. The air is cool in the lungs. I reach a corner where the canal turns sharply. I follow it. The light changes, shifting from the cool blue of shadow to a slice of warm gold where the sun has managed to find a gap in the roofline. I walk through the beam of light. It feels physical, a brief embrace of warmth before I step back into the shade. The path continues. I am not looking for anything specific yet. I am simply existing in the motion. The visual field is filled with textures. The rough grain of the brick, the smooth polish of the door handles, the rusted iron of the window grates. A cat sits on a windowsill, eyes closed, tail wrapped neatly around its paws. It does not move as I pass. It is part of the architecture, a gargoyle of soft fur. I walk until the rhythm of my steps feels like the only clock that matters. There is no urgency. The destination is secondary to the act of arriving. Gradually, the landscape begins to shift. The Rio di San Polo feeds into smaller arteries. I cross a bridge, the Pont del Forner, feeling the rise and fall of the arch in my legs. I am moving north now, drifting toward the district of Canergio. The transition to Canergio is subtle. The streets straighten slightly. The canals feel longer, stretching out toward the northern edge of the lagoon. The air feels different here, less enclosed, perhaps carrying a faint hint of the open marshes to the north. I am looking for a specific anomaly, a bridge with no sides. Venice was once full of them. In the early days, bridges were flat spans of wood or stone without parapets, built for utility, not safety. Over the centuries, rails were added, stone balustrades erected. But one remains in a public space, a fossil of the old city. The Pont Kyoto, the Nail Bridge. I turn down the Fondamenta della Misericordia. It is a long, straight quay. The sun is higher now, illuminating the northern bank. I scan the canals, intersecting the Fondamenta, and then I see it. It spans the Rio di San Felice. It is startling in its simplicity. A bridge is usually a container, a safe passage that holds you in. This bridge is merely a surface. I approach it slowly. It is built of brick and stone, stepping up in a steep arch. There is no iron rail. There is no stone wall. There is only the edge of the steps, and then the air, and then the water below. I stop at the base of the bridge. It looks vulnerable, like a creature that has lost its shell. I place a foot on the first step. The stone is wide, the riser shallow. I ascend. Halfway up, the sensation of exposure is acute. Without the visual cue of a handrail, my balance system wakes up, alerting every muscle in my legs to stabilize. The horizon opens up. To the left, the canal stretches away under a succession of other railed bridges. To the right, it vanishes around a bend. I stand at the apex of the arch. This is the sub-goal, the observation of the moss line from a place of exposure. From this height, without a barrier blocking the view, the line where the water meets the city is incredibly distinct. I look down. Directly below the bridge, the canal is shadowed and dark. The water laps against the brick foundations of the bridge itself. The moss line here is thick and lush. It is a living skirt around the base of the bridge. The algae is a deep, vibrant green, almost black in the shadows, brightening to a vivid chartreuse where a stray beam of sun hits it. It looks soft, like wet velvet, but I know it is slick and slimy. I observe the tide marks. They are history written in salt. There is the current water level, rippling and active. 6 inches above that, a dark stain shows the high water of the previous night. A foot above that, the white efflorescence of salt crystals blooms from the brick, marking the average high tide of the season. And higher still, the plaster is stained a faint brown, a memory of the great floods of years past. The water below is constantly moving. It swirls around the corner of the bridge abutment, creating small eddies. A plastic bottle cap floats by, trapped in the circular current, spinning slowly. I focus on the texture of the bridge beneath my boots. The steps are paved with red bricks, laid on their edges. They are worn smooth in the center, dipped slightly from years of use. Grass and small weeds grow in the cracks between the bricks, resilient life claiming the mortar. Standing here, suspended over the water without a cage, the city feels different. It feels less like a museum and more like a living, precarious thing. The separation between the solid stone and the fluid water is thin. One step sideways is all it takes to cross from one element to the other. I take a deep breath, tasting the salt. The silence of Canergio is deep. A window opens somewhere down the canal, the domestic trumpet again. But it sounds distant, belonging to another world. Carefully, I descend the other side of the bridge. The descent requires more focus than the climb. I watch my feet placement, ensuring my heel catches the back of the tread. Reaching the pavement on the other side, I feel a phantom sensation of weight returning, the comfort of the solid ground. There is a low stone bench near the water's edge, shaded by the overhang of a building. I move toward it and sit. The stone is cool through my trousers. I stretch my legs out, crossing my ankles. From here, I can look back at the bridge. It creates a perfect reflection in the water, a stone circle completed by its own image. I watch the light shift. The sun is moving across the sky, dragging the shadows with it. The line of shade on the wall opposite me creeps downward, inch by inch, revealing more of the ochre plaster, warming the cold bricks. A boat approaches from the far end of the canal. It is a workboat, low and wide, carrying bags of cement. The driver stands at the stern, hand on the tiller, a cigarette dangling from his lips. He passes under the Pont Kyoto. He does not look up. To him, the bridge is just another arch, another obstacle to navigate. The wake of his boat rolls down the canal. I watch it hit the reflection of the bridge, shattering the perfect circle into 1,000 shards of light and color. The image dissolves, shaking and trembling. I wait. I watch the water settle. The shards rejoin. The jagged lines smooth out. The circle reforms, slowly, lazily, until the bridge is whole again in the dark mirror. The air is heavy now, settling into the late morning. The sharp chill of dawn has evaporated, replaced by a comfortable, still warmth. My breathing is slow and shallow. The rhythm of the walk still hums in my legs, a ghost of motion. I rest my hands on my knees. I watch the moss line, that eternal boundary between the city and the sea. It breathes with the tide, a slow, planetary respiration. The water rises a fraction of an inch, covering a patch of green. It holds there for a moment, suspended before sliding back down. Rise and fall, cover and reveal. I let my eyes go soft, losing focus on the details. The colors blur together. The red of the brick, the green of the moss, the gray of the water. They merge into a single, soothing palette. The sounds of the city drift away, becoming a distant, indistinct hum. There is only the water and the stone and the quiet space between them. The day is fully here, but I am still drifting, content to stay in the valley of the morning a little longer. The water of the Grand Canal breathes differently at 5 in the morning. It is not the churned, chaotic surface of the afternoon, cut by taxis and delivery barges. At this hour, it is a heavy, dark sheet of glass, rising and falling with the slow pulse of the tide. I stand on the open deck of the No. 1 Vaporetto, leaning against the cold metal railing. The engine beneath the floorboards offers a steady, rhythmic vibration that travels up through the soles of my shoes, a low hum that seems to harmonize with the gray mist clinging to the palaces. We drift past the darkened windows of the Palazzetto stern. There are no lights on in the city yet. Venice is a sleeping giant, wrapped in a blanket of damp, saline air. The Vaporetto slows, the engine note dropping an octave as we approach the floating dock of the Accademia. The boat bumps gently against the rubber bumpers of the station, a soft, dull collision that barely rocks the deck. I step off. The wooden planks of the landing stage shift slightly under my weight, floating on the water's surface. There is no one else here. ticket barriers stand open and silent. I walk up the ramp and onto the solid stone of the fondamenta, turning immediately toward the great wooden arc that spans the canal. Most of Venice is built of stone, marble, and brick, materials meant to resist the water. But the Accademia Bridge is timber and steel, a warm, organic presence against the cool grays of the morning. I approach the first step. It is wide and shallow, designed for a slow, measured ascent. My boot lands on the wood. The sound is distinct, a hollow, muted thud that differs entirely from the sharp clack of stone. As I climb, the bridge responds. It does not shake, but it resonates. There is a deep, timbered vibration that answers every footfall, a feeling of stored energy within the beams. The wood is damp with morning dew, darkening the grain to the color of espresso. I run my hand along the wide handrail. It is smooth, worn down by millions of hands before mine, cool and slick with the mist. At the apex of the bridge, the city opens up. I pause here, suspended over the center of the Grand Canal. To my left, the waterway curves toward the basin, disappearing into a wall of fog. To my right, it winds back toward the station. The water below is silent, save for the soft lapping against the wooden pilings of the palaces. The dome of the Salute Church is just a pale ghost in the distance, a sketch in charcoal against a pearl gray sky. I remain here for a long time. The resonance of the bridge settles. The vibration stops, leaving only the stillness of the air. It feels as though the city is holding its breath, waiting for the first touch of sunlight to exhale. Descending, the other side feels lighter. Gravity assists the motion, carrying me down the wooden stairs toward the sestiere of San Marco. But I turn sharply, aiming for the maze of quieter streets that lead toward the back of the district, toward Castello. The wood gives way to paving stones again, the familiar, uneven terrain of the city. The transition from the open space of the canal to the narrow cal is immediate. The air grows stiller, trapped between high walls of brick and plaster. The smell here is ancient, wet stone, moss, and the faint, sweet scent of baking bread drifting from a shuttered window somewhere high above. I begin to walk. This is not a walk with a destination that requires a map. It is a surrender to the geometry of the city. I allow the streets to dictate the path. A left turn where a wall angles inward. A right turn where a small bridge arches over a silent, black canal. The rhythm of walking becomes the only thing that matters. Left foot, right foot, the soft scrape of rubber on stone. The walls here are high, blocking out the sky, creating a tunnel of shadows. The plaster is peeling in places, revealing the rough red brick beneath, like the skin of the city shedding to show its bones. I pass a doorway, the wood dark and knotted, the iron handle rusted into a permanent latch. Above it, a small stone lion watches the street, its features worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. I continue forward. The street widens slightly, then narrows again. The light is changing, shifting from the flat gray of dawn to a cooler, bluer tone as the sun begins to crest the horizon behind the clouds. But down here, in the veins of the city, it is still twilight. There is a rhythm to the paving stones. Large, rectangular slabs of trachyte, gray and volcanic, bordered by white limestone. I watch the pattern move beneath me. Gray, gray, white. Gray, gray, white. It is hypnotic, a visual metronome that syncs with my breathing. A bridge appears. It is small, barely rising above the waterline of a narrow side canal. I step up. 1, 2, 3 steps. The top is flat. I look down. The water is motionless, a black mirror reflecting the iron railing of the bridge. I step down. 1, 2, 3. The rhythm resumes. The silence is absolute. There are no boats on this small canal. No voices. No footsteps other than my own. The city feels empty. A stage set waiting for the actors to arrive. I am the only one moving, a solitary figure navigating the labyrinth. I turn a corner and the air temperature drops. The street here is narrower, the buildings taller. The sun will not reach the pavement here for hours, perhaps not at all today. The dampness is palpable, a cool touch against the skin of my face. I pull my coat tighter. The path continues. It winds and curves, mimicking the flow of the water that surrounds it. I follow the curve. A long stretch of wall, unbroken by doors or windows, guides me. The bricks are covered in a fine layer of green moss near the ground, a velvet texture that softens the hard edges of the architecture. I walk. The sound of my steps echoes slightly, bouncing off the opposing wall and returning to me a fraction of a second later. It creates a sense of companionship, as if the city is walking with me, repeating my movements. Step, echo, step, echo. I pass a small altar built into the wall, a faded painting of a saint behind dirty glass, a single plastic flower resting in a metal holder. The colors are muted pale blue, faded gold, dusty rose. I do not stop, but I acknowledge it with a glance, a brief connection with the devotion of whoever placed it there. The street opens into a small square, a campiello. It is empty. A wellhead stands in the center, its stone lid sealed with rusted iron. I circle the wellhead, my hand brushing the cold, pitted stone of the rim. I complete the circle and choose a street on the far side, continuing the journey. This new street is straight, a rare thing in Venice. It creates a vanishing point in the distance, a tunnel of light and shadow. I focus on that distant point and walk toward it. The windows above are shuttered tight, green wood against ochre plaster. The flower boxes are empty, waiting for spring. The walking becomes automatic. I am no longer thinking about the movement of my legs. I am simply floating through the stone corridors. The sensation of time fading away is strong. There is no past, no future, only this continuous forward motion, the steady beat of boots on stone, the cool air filling my lungs, the smell of salt and old brick. I cross another bridge. This one is steeper. I feel the muscles in my legs engage as I push up the incline. The railing is cold iron, rough with layers of black paint. At the top, I look down a long canal that stretches away to the right. A single seagull sits on a mooring pole, silent and white, watching the water. I descend. The texture of the ground changes. The smooth trachyte gives way to brick laid in a herringbone pattern. The surface is uneven, rippled by the settling of the ground over centuries. I adjust my stride, shortening my steps to navigate the terrain. The rhythm changes. It becomes faster, lighter. I turn left, then right, then left again. The logic of the compass does not apply here. I am moving deeper into the district of Castello, away from the grand monuments, into the residential heart, where the laundry lines hang empty between buildings, and the silence is heavy and protective. Ahead, the architecture shifts. The buildings seem to lean closer together, their upper stories almost touching, blocking out the strip of sky. The shadows deepen. I am approaching the Court de la Colline. It is not marked by grand signs. It is a secret folded into the map. I find the entrance, a low, dark archway that looks more like the mouth of a cave than a street. I step under the heavy stone lintel. The air inside the Sotto Portico, the tunnel under the building, is significantly colder. It is a pocket of permanent night. My footsteps change sound instantly. The open echo of the street is replaced by a tight, dry resonance. The ceiling is low, heavy timber beams blackened by age, supporting the floor of the homes above. I walk through the tunnel. It is long, curving slightly, so that the exit is not immediately visible. The darkness is complete for a moment, a sensory deprivation that heightens the sound of my breathing. Then the light returns, but it is different. I emerge into the courtyard, the Court de la Colline. It is a space out of time. The light here does not fall directly. It filters down, bouncing off the warm terracotta walls, turning the air into a soft, amber haze. The courtyard is defined by the columns that give it its name. Thick, stout pillars of white Istrian stone that support the overhanging galleries of the apartments above. They are Byzantine in style, simple and robust. Their capitals carved with leaves that have been softened by 500 years of air. I move to the center of the courtyard. The silence here is heavy, different from the silence of the canals. It is the silence of an enclosed room. The buildings wrap around me completely, a fortress of domesticity. The shadows in the corners are deep, almost purple in the early light. They are not sharp, angular shadows cast by direct sun, but soft, diffuse pools of darkness that seem to have mass. They cling to the base of the columns, grounding them. I lean against one of the pillars. The stone is cold, sucking the warmth from my shoulder through the layers of my coat. I look up. The windows facing the courtyard are small, some framed in stone arches that speak of a time when this city looked east to Constantinople for its inspiration. There is a stillness here that commands respect. I do not want to move. I do not want to break the equilibrium of the scene. I watch the way the light slowly creeps down the wall on the west side. It highlights the texture of the plaster, revealing cracks and patches, a map of repairs and endurance. A vine grows in one corner, a tangled skeleton of brown wood clinging to the brick, waiting for the warmth to return. The atmosphere is thick. It feels like standing inside a history book that has been closed for a century. The air is still, undisturbed by the wind that might be blowing out on the lagoon. Here, the air is preserved, holding the memory of the night. I push away from the pillar, moving slowly across the flagstones. In the center of the courtyard, the stones are laid in a circle, radiating outward. I trace the pattern with my eyes. It is a mandala of gray stone, a focal point that anchors the space. I walk to the far side of the courtyard, where another archway leads back out into the world. I pause before entering it. I look back at the columns, standing like sentinels in the half-light. They have seen plague and carnival, flood and drought, empire and decline. They stand mute and patient. Turning away, I enter the second tunnel. The ceiling here is lower, forcing me to duck my head slightly. The darkness wraps around me again, resetting my vision. When I step out the other side, the brightness of the morning feels sudden, almost intrusive. I am near the edge of the island now. The scent of the open lagoon is stronger brine, seaweed, and cold water. I follow a narrow fondamenta that runs parallel to a wide canal. The water here is choppy, stirred by the morning breeze coming off the sea. There is a stone bench facing the water, set back against a brick wall. I sit. The stone is damp, but I settle onto it, letting the weight of the walk drain from my legs. The sun has finally broken through the lower bank of clouds. It casts a long, flat beam of light across the water, turning the gray surface to polished steel. A small boat, a topo with a blue hull, chugs slowly past. The man at the tiller stands motionless, his silhouette dark against the bright water. He does not look at me. He is part of the morning, just as the bridge and the courtyard were. I watch the wake of his boat. It spreads out in a V shape, rolling toward the stone bank at my feet. The waves slap against the mossy steps. Slap, 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 then silence again. The light warms my face, though the air remains cool. I close my eyes for a moment, listening to the city waking up behind me. A shutter creaks open. A church bell tolls the hour, the sound deep and resonant, traveling over the rooftops. I open my eyes and fix my gaze on a wooden piling in the middle of the canal. The water swirls around it, creating small eddies that spin and dissolve. It is a mesmerizing dance, a constant creation and destruction of form. The day is beginning for Venice, but for me, this moment is a pause, a suspended breath between the night and the morning. I let my focus soften. The sharp edges of the buildings across the canal begin to blur. The sound of the boat engine fades into the distance, becoming a hum that matches the vibration I felt on the bridge hours ago. I watch the water. It flows steadily, carrying driftweed and light toward the open sea. I let my thoughts drift with it, floating on the surface, moving away from the shore, caught in the gentle, relentless current of the tide. The water takes the thought and carries it out to sea. The air in the Dorseguro district at 5:30 in the morning does not feel like air at all, but rather like a suspended ocean. It is heavy, cool, and carries the distinct, ancient perfume of salt and wet stone. There is no wind to move it. The mist has settled into the narrow corridors of the city, erasing the tops of the bell towers and softening the hard edges of the brickwork, until the entire world looks like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. I step out from the heavy timber door of the residence, the latch clicking shut behind me with a sound that seems too loud for this hour. The street or cal is empty. It is not merely uninhabited. It feels as though no one has ever walked here, and no one ever will again. The paving stones, large rectangular slabs of gray trachyte, glisten with a layer of dew that mirrors the pale, violet light of the pre-dawn sky. My path today is not guided by a map or a destination, but by the search for silence. Specifically, the deep, resonant silence found in the tunnels that cut beneath the palazzos. In Venice, these are called sottoporticos. They are the secret arteries of the city, shadowy passages where the sun never quite reaches, and where the sound of the city is distilled into a single, acoustic footprint. I turn left, moving away from the Grand Canal and deeper into the residential maze. The buildings here are lower, their plaster peeling in layers of ochre, terracotta, and faded pink, revealing the rough red brick beneath. Shutters are pulled tight against the damp morning. Not a single light burns in the windows above. The only illumination comes from the occasional iron lantern bracketed to the wall. casting a warm, amber pool of light that fails to penetrate the fog for more than a few feet. My shoes make a soft, rhythmic scuffing sound on the stones. It is a steady cadence. 1, 2, 1, 2. The rhythm becomes an anchor, keeping me tethered to the ground, while the rest of the visual world floats in the haze. Ahead, the narrow street abruptly ends, seemingly blocked by the sheer wall of a massive building. But as I draw closer, the darkness at the base of the wall reveals itself not as a shadow, but as an opening. This is the entrance to the Sotto Portico del Cassin dei Nobili. It is a low archway, framed in white Istrian stone that has been worn smooth by centuries of passing shoulders and brushing hands. I step across the threshold, and the atmosphere changes instantly. The air inside the tunnel is 10 degrees cooler. It smells of old mortar and the tidal water that laps just a few yards away. I move to the center of the passageway and let my weight settle into my heels. I cease moving. The tunnel is perhaps 20 yards long, a dark throat connecting 2 open squares. The ceiling is timbered, dark beams running horizontally, absorbing the scant light. Here, the silence is not an absence of sound, but a presence. It is a heavy, velvet weight that presses against the ears. Then I hear it, the echo, somewhere near the water entrance of the tunnel, a leak in the gutter, or perhaps merely the accumulation of the heavy mist has created a drip. It falls. A second of silence follows. It strikes the stone floor. The sound is incredibly precise. It is a sharp, glassy note that rings out, hitting the stone walls, bouncing to the timber ceiling, and returning to my ears with a clarity that feels magnified. It does not sound like water. It sounds like a small silver hammer striking a bell. I wait for the next one. My breathing slows to match the anticipation. The droplet forms, unseen in the shadows. Gravity takes hold. It falls. Impact. The echo ripples through the tunnel, overlapping slightly with the memory of the previous sound. There is a musicality to it, a slow, unintentional composition created by the city itself. I remain there for a long time, simply counting the beats. The rhythm is not perfect. There is a natural variation, a hesitation now and then, which makes it feel organic, like a heartbeat. Eventually, I shift my weight. The fabric of my coat rustles, and the sound is amplified into a roar within the confined space. I begin to move again, walking softly toward the far end of the tunnel, where a rectangle of gray light marks the exit. Emerging from the Sotto Portico feels like surfacing from deep water. The space opens up. The sky is a lighter shade of gray now, leaning toward a bruised purple in the east. I am nearing the Satyr, the long, wide promenade that runs along the southern edge of the city, facing the Giudecca Canal. Here, the sensory landscape shifts. The intimacy of the tunnels is replaced by the vastness of the lagoon. The water is a flat sheet of steel, merging with the sky at a horizon line that is completely invisible in the fog. I turn west, walking along the edge of the fondamenta. This is the beginning of the long valley of movement. The path is wide here. The stones are set in a herringbone pattern, bordered by white bands of marble. I fall into a stride that is faster than the shuffle in the tunnel, but still unhurried. The water to my left is silent, save for the rhythmic slapping of the tide against the stone steps that descend into the canal. Lap, pause, lap, pause. I fix my eyes on the middle distance, where the fog is thickest. There are no boats yet. The vaporettos have not started their main shifts, and the delivery barges are still tied up, their blue tarps glistening with moisture. I walk. The repetition of movement becomes a form of hypnosis. Left foot, right foot. The slight unevenness of the stones sends small adjustments up through my ankles and knees. A constant physical conversation between the ground and the body. The air is cold on my cheeks, a stark contrast to the warmth radiating from inside my coat. A bridge rises out of the mist ahead. It is a simple arch of brick and stone with a black metal railing. I ascend the steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. The elevation changes the perspective slightly, offering a view down a side canal that disappears into nothingness after 50 feet. I descend. 1, 2, 3, 4. The rhythm resumes. The buildings on my right are a blur of muted colors, shuttered windows, heavy wooden doors, garden walls spilling over with dark ivy. I do not stop to examine them. They are merely textures in the periphery. The focus is entirely on the act of walking. There is a profound sense of solitude on the Zatter at this hour. It is a solitude that does not feel lonely, but rather private, as if the city has been cleared specifically for this moment. The only other sign of life is a seagull sitting, motionless, on a wooden piling, its white feathers stark against the gray water. It watches me pass without turning its head. I continue. The promenade stretches on. The rhythm of my steps creates a steady beat in the quiet air. I listen to the sound of my own breath, steady and deep, mixing with the damp atmosphere. The fog dampens everything, removing the treble from the world and leaving only the bass notes, the groan of a distant hull, the low hum of a generator somewhere across the water. The mental noise of the previous days begins to fade, replaced by the simple geometry of the walk. Horizontal line of the water, vertical line of the masts, diagonal line of the bridge. The mind empties, leaving only the sensory input of the present moment. The dampness has soaked into the stone benches that line the path, I do not sit, but I brush my hand along the back of one as I pass. The wood is cold and slick. The tactile sensation is sharp and grounding. I walk past the Church of the Gesuati. Its facade is a looming shadow in the mist, massive and silent. I do not look up at the statues. I keep my gaze level, watching the way the mist swirls just above the surface of the water, moving in slow, ghostly currents that have nothing to do with the wind. The rhythm continues. Step, breath, step, breath. There is a comfort in this monotony. It demands nothing. It asks for no decisions. It is simply a trajectory through space and time, unburdened by destination. The world narrows down to the 10 feet of pavement immediately in front of me. I pass a small kiosk, shuttered tight, its metal sides painted a dark green. I pass a row of trees, their branches bare and black, reaching up like cracks in the sky. The leaves that have not yet fallen are brown and sodden, matted against the base of the trunks. The walking continues for what feels like an hour, though it may only be 20 minutes. Time is difficult to gauge without the sun. The light changes imperceptibly, shifting from violet to a pale, washed-out blue. But the fog holds the world in a state of suspension. Gradually, a new sound begins to weave itself into the rhythm of the water and my footsteps. It is a low, mechanical vibration. It is not aggressive, but steady, a thrumming. I slow my pace. Ahead, the shape of a vaporetto station materializes out of the gray. It is a floating platform, tethered to the fondamenta by heavy chains and a metal gangway. The yellow lights of the station are still on, though they are beginning to look pale against the brightening sky. I approach the gangway. The metal gate is open. I step onto the floating pontoon. The structure shifts slightly under my weight, a gentle, fluid movement that signals the transition from land to water. There is no one else here. The ticket reader beeps with a soft, electronic chirp as I pass, the only digital sound in an analog morning. I walk to the edge of the platform and lean against the railing. The water in the canal is churning slightly, agitated by the approach of the boat. I look to the west. Out of the mist, the vaporetto appears. It is a number 2, the line that circles the city. It moves slowly, its bow cutting the water with a smooth, silent efficiency. The white cabin is illuminated from within, a warm, traveling capsule of light. The boat slows as it nears the dock. The engine note drops in pitch, deepening to a guttural rumble that vibrates through the soles of my shoes and into my chest. The water between the hull and the station boils and froths, turning white. With a gentle thud, the boat makes contact with the bumpers. A crewman in a blue jacket throws a thick rope over the bollard, the hemp rasping against the metal. The gate slides open with a mechanical hiss. I step across the gap. The deck of the vaporetto is vibrating, a living thing. I choose not to go inside the heated cabin. Instead, I move to the small, open area at the stern, behind the cabin, and just above the churning wake. There are 3 circular plastic seats, wet with dew. I remain standing, holding the cold metal railing. The gate closes. The rope is cast off. The engine surges, a rising power that pushes the floor up against my feet. We pull away from the Zatter. The gap between the boat and the land widens, exposing the dark, swirling water beneath. The promenade where I just walked recedes into the mist, becoming a flat, gray line before disappearing entirely. Now there is only the water. The vaporetto steadies onto its course, moving down the Giudecca Canal. The sensation is one of gliding. The friction of the world has been removed. We are floating. I watch the wake of the boat. It unfolds behind us in a wide V shape, a chaotic landscape of white foam and churning green water that gradually smooths out as it spreads, eventually becoming gentle rollers that disappear into the fog. The sound is all-encompassing. The roar of the engine, the rush of the water, the wind created by our movement. It is a wall of white noise that blocks out everything else. It is incredibly peaceful. To my right, the island of Giudecca is a dark smudge. To my left, the main body of Venice is a ghost. We are traveling in the space between, a corridor of water and light. I close my eyes for a moment, letting the vibration of the rail travel up my arms. I can feel the power of the displacement, the sheer weight of the boat pushing the lagoon aside. When I open my eyes, the quality of the light has shifted again. The blue is receding, replaced by a soft, pearlescent white. The sun is not yet visible, but its presence is felt. The mist is beginning to glow from within, turning from a heavy blanket into a luminous veil. We pass a channel marker, 3 wooden pilings bound together by iron bands. They lean at a jaunty angle, covered in barnacles and green seaweed at the waterline. A cormorant stands on the tallest one, wings spread wide to dry in the damp air. We pass it in seconds, leaving it behind in the white noise. The boat begins a wide turn, banking slightly. We are rounding the tip of the island, heading toward the basin of San Marco. The wind picks up here, sharper, carrying the open sea tang of the Adriatic. I shift my position, turning to face the bow. The wind presses against my face, cold and bracing. It pulls the hood of my coat back. Ahead, the fog is thinner. Shapes are beginning to resolve with greater clarity. The dome of the Salute Church rises like a great white crown. Its scrolls and statues pale against the sky. It seems to float, unsupported by the earth. The vaporetto slows again. The engine note drops. We are drifting now, carrying our momentum through the water. The silence returns, layered over the gentle wash of the hull. The sky to the east is no longer gray. A faint, horizontal band of pale peach has appeared at the waterline, separating the sea from the clouds. It is the first true color of the day. It is delicate, fragile, like the inside of a shell. I watch the color expand. It bleeds upward, tinting the bottom of the mist with rose and gold. The water reflects it, catching the light on the crest of each small wave, turning the dark lagoon into a field of moving copper. The boat idles, waiting for a lane to clear at the next station. We are suspended in the center of the basin. The city surrounds us, the Doge's palace, the campanile, the island of San Giorgio. But they are distant, silent watchers. I look down at the water, directly below the rail. It is clear enough here to see the bubbles rising from the propeller, spirals of air twisting up to the surface. They burst and vanish. The air is still cold, but the bite has gone out of it. The promise of the sun brings a different kind of warmth, not thermal, but emotional. It is the feeling of arrival, of having navigated the night and the fog to reach this specific, luminous moment. The engine engages again, a low, polite rumble. The boat begins to pivot, aligning itself with the dock at San Zaccaria. The movement is slow, deliberate. I do not move toward the exit gate yet. I stay at the rail, watching the peach light intensify, watching the gold spread across the water, watching the day begin its slow, inevitable ascent. The city waits, and I wait with it, drifting in the quiet space between the water and the light.